Welcome everyone to Music of the Mountains Jindo Dog Journeys. Today I want to spend some time talking about my favorite hard rock metal releases of 2022. Overall, I thought 2022 was a pretty good year for the kind of music that I generally prefer. There were a lot of good releases this year. There were some good releases by bands that I did not end up buying, but still thought that their new music was pretty good. So I'm going to show you today some of the stuff that I got this year, because I really like the albums that these bands produced this year, and I hope that there is more to come in the future. So before diving into 2022, I want to spend a moment recapping 2021 and just mention what was my favorite album of 2021, which was the Vintage Caravan's Monuments album. This was a fantastic album that came out last year by Iceland's The Vintage Caravan. This just blew me away. And if you haven't heard of the Vintage Caravan, I implore you to go out and listen to their music, listen to this, or listen to some of their other albums. If you want more information about them, check out a couple of the videos that I've done here on my channel about the Vintage Caravan, like my top 10 Vintage Caravan song video and a number of honorable mentions. That'll give you kind of a direction of what some of the best songs in their catalog are, but pretty much everything in their catalog is great. And I also did an album review video on this. Anyway, they're from Iceland. They're a three-piece. If you like classic hard rock from the 70s, think Rush, Black Sabbath, Deep Purple, Cream, Jimi Hendrix Experience, maybe some Iron Maiden. A lot of that just blended together with outstanding musicianship. They're a power trio from Iceland. I just can't say enough good things about how great this album is. So that was definitely my favorite release of 2021. But 2022 kicked off with an excellent release from Canada's Voivod. This Synchro Anarchy. This was Voivod's latest release. Really like this album, and I really am impressed with how good this album sounds. I like the production on it a lot. And Voivod, of course, have been around for getting close to 40 years now. They have some different phases in their career, but if you like progressive metal that is not really commercial, but very accessible and listenable and just sounds good, definitely check out Voivod. I'm a big Voivod fan, and this was an excellent release. Okay. Another very fine release from this year, I think it came out earlier in the year, like last February or so, was Eddie Vedder's Earthling solo album. Eddie Vedder, of course, the lead singer for Pearl Jam. I tell you, I haven't been the biggest Pearl Jam fan after their first three albums. I, however, was very surprised at how good this was and how much I liked it. There are a couple of guest appearances on this album too, like from Elton John and Stevie Wonder, who plays harmonica on one of the tracks. One thing I like about this album is, again, the production. It sounds clean and it sounds clear and very listenable, very enjoyable. A lot of good songs on here. Yeah, the song Long Way, check that out if you're a Tom Petty fan. And tell me that doesn't remind you of a Tom Petty song. Totally reminds me of a Tom Petty song. But a lot of other good tracks on here. Okay. I believe in March was when this fine album was released, the latest album from Ghost, Impera. This was not a gatefold, but this is the album that has got me on the Ghost train, so to speak. I'm a little late to the party, I guess, with Ghost, but I went back and I've explored all their prior releases since getting into this one, and definitely like most of what they have released, but this is definitely my favorite. And I like the commerciality of it, I like the accessibility of it, all the hooks, the poppiness of it. Yes, it's kind of metal or hard rock in places, and still, but I think hard rock or metal needs albums like this sometimes, you know, that have that commerciality to them that can appeal to massive audiences. And the songs on here are, some of them are very catchy and memorable, and I've really enjoyed this throughout the year. A lot of their kind of like their makeup and stage appearance reminds me of like Alice Cooper or Kiss from the 70s or 80s. It's not a lot different in my mind than some of those groups. Anyway, if you haven't checked this out yet, highly recommend Ghost, Imperia. Okay, this next one is probably was my most anticipated release of 2022. Porcupine Tree, Closure Continuation. I was a huge Porcupine Tree back in the day, back in the early 2000s. Loved a lot of their catalog before the year 2000 as well. And so when I heard that they were regrouping and releasing a new album, I was so excited. And this really didn't disappoint. It's a very strong album. It's Steven Wilson, Gavin Harrison, and Richard Barbieri. There is no Colin Edwin on this album, but I think the songs are very strong on here. Gavin Harrison, maybe the world's greatest prog rock drummer. Richard Barbieri, amazing keyboardist, and of course Steven Wilson is, we all know about him and his talent. So this was a great release. I was really pleased with this. I'm hoping that this isn't the end for them. I don't know. Still seems kind of up in the air what their future is. I do see they have a couple of festival dates for 2023 scheduled already, but hopefully this isn't the end for them. But you know, this was a great album if it was, and one that I'll enjoy for a long time. Another fantastic release this year was this by William Duvall of Alice in Chains. This was a solo live recording that he did in Nashville in late 2021 that he recorded with a bass player and a drummer directly to vinyl. It's very unique. It's a unique live album. So that in itself is worth checking out, but the songs and the performances on here are great. This had to be a very kind of pressure-filled experience because you're recording to vinyl live, and so if you make a mistake, it's like the whole thing kind of is over at that point. But it's a raw, visceral, and very exciting listen, and I'm just really pleased with this. Glad I got a copy of it. Okay, another one is by a German group, Wukan, a female-fronted four-piece band from Germany. Their lead singer, her name's Florence. She also plays the flute and guitar. Their songs are pretty catchy. Think like old 70s kind of doom, stoner, hard rock with maybe a little bit of Jethro Tull thrown in there with the flute. Very interesting. This is a really good album. Glad I acquired that. And of course, there was the new Ozzy Osbourne album that came out in September, Patient Number 9. And people, you know, far as people's opinions of modern day Ozzy albums, they're quite variable, and some people are not too pleased with his recent output and his collaboration with Andrew Watt as his producer, who also plays on the album, plays some of the instruments on the album. But there are a lot of guest appearances on Patient Number 9. I think my favorite collaboration of any of the songs on here was his collaboration with Eric Clapton for the song One of These Days. The title track is really good as well. I like that. The song Immortal, I think that has Mike McCready from Pearl Jam on it on guitar. Mr. Darkness is another really good song I like a lot on here. Of course, Tony Iommi from Black Sabbath partners up with Ozzy for a couple of tracks. So it's really good. I think it's probably a better album than his 2020 release with Andrew Watt, the Ordinary Man album, which I liked. I liked that quite a bit too, and I did a review on it at the time here on the channel. But I think this one's a little better. I think in September was when this album came out, Clutch, Sunrise on Slaughter Beach. Really like this album. Kind of late to the game with Clutch too, but since listening to this, I've gone back and I've started exploring a lot of their other albums, and I really like them. American hard rock band from, I believe, Maryland. This is a really good, enjoyable album. It's very listenable. Okay, one of my favorite finds from 2022 is this group, Kings of Mercia. Kings of Mercia. And this is a unique group that consists of the former guitarist and bass player from the prog metal band Fates Warning. Okay, Jim Matheos on guitars and Joey Vera on bass. And we have Steve Overland on vocals. And Steve Overland was in the British band FM. Started off in the 80s, kind of a commercial rock band from the 80s. Had a song called That Girl that was on, I think, their first album that Iron Maiden actually has a cover of. So anyway, Steve Overland and the guys from Fates Warning, and then the drummer from Toto, Simon Phillips. So unique personnel coming together to create a very accessible hard rock album, but very catchy songs, very memorable, and I hope there's more to come with Kings of Mercia, because I really like that. One of my favorite releases from this year was Queensryche's new album, Digital Noise Alliance. This was a fantastic release. Of course, Todd La Torre on vocals again. This might be my favorite of the Todd La Torre era, and definitely at the top of my list for, or near the top of my list for albums of the year. This could be number one, maybe a couple of these others could be number one. I'm not quite sure which yet will be number one. And finally, the albums I acquired this year is the Dead Daisies' latest release, Radiance. Of course, this is their second album with Glenn Hughes on vocals. Really good release. I like it a lot. I think it's also got a lot of great songs on there. Maybe not quite as good as their first one from last year with Glenn Hughes on vocals. That was called Holy Ground. I did a review of that here on my channel too, if you wanted to check that out. But this is really strong. I like the playing on it, and I hope they continue to release some new albums in the future with Glenn Hughes. So there you have it. Again, there were other good releases this year, like by the new Saxon album. There was the Scorpions album. There was the Megadeth album. And others as well, but these are the ones that I liked the most, that I went out and had to purchase for my collection, and I was pretty pleased overall with what 2022 had to offer. Hopefully there's more good stuff to come in 2023. Anyway, take care everyone. Let me know what some of your favorites were this year. See you again soon.